Welcome to the February 16th meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have a roll call, please?
Council members Draymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Quintero.
Here. The flag salute this evening will be led by Councilmember Friedman and the invocation of the City Clerk Pasaki.
Please place your right hand over your heart and join me in saluting our nation's flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for the invocation. Yesterday, having been President's Day, it's only appropriate that we draw our inspiration for tonight's invocation from a presidential quote. President Kennedy remarked that our problems are man-made, therefore they may be solved by man. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Tonight, as we tackle the man-made problems that face us as individuals, as neighbors, and as partners in commerce or otherwise, let us seek the solutions that bring the best of each individual or group to the table for our common good. Let us pray for the prosperity and safety of our jewel city. We pray that this council is granted the guidance and wisdom necessary to face the issues before them with our best interests at heart and the city's viability in mind. Amen.
There we have your report.
The agenda for the February 16, 2010 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, February 11, 2010 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay, next, please.
Next is presentations and appointments. At 3A is the agenda preview for the meetings of February 23, 2010.
Mr. Starbird.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll go to Yasmin Beers, Deputy City Manager, for the report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, for February 23rd, there are no Glendale Housing Authority or Redevelopment Agency business agenda items. For the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, we do have a joint public meeting at 2:30. Director of Community Services and Parks regarding preparation of environmental impact report for the Columbus Elementary School soccer field joint use project. That evening at 6 p.m. for the Glendale City Council meeting. We have a number of items under consent. Director of Community Services and Parks, approval to submit the Verdugo Workforce Investment Board's annual plan modification to the state. Director of Libraries, appropriation of funds for grants awarded to the Glendale Public Libraries for various library services. Director of Public Works, reassignment of the Stalker Street Rehabilitation Project. This is Phase 2. We have a number of action items. Director of Public Works regarding update report regarding the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health Policies for Livable Active Communities and Environments grant and collaboration with the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. We have at 8B, Director of Community Planning, proposed fees for Community Planning Department, Building and Safety Division, and Planning Division. And City Attorney regarding findings in support of denial of setback variance located at 1149 Cordova Avenue. Under hearings, we have Fire Chief regarding the 2010 annual weed abatement program and the Director of Community Planning for the 2010 Census Outreach Update and Supplemental Funding Request. That concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next, please.
At 4, City Council and staff comments.
Comments? Mr. Draymond.
Well, I'd like to announce, Mr. Mayor, the 97th birthday of the town of Montrose, which will be celebrated at their annual Founders Day on February 21st, this upcoming Sunday, which runs in tandem with the Montrose Harvest Market from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. In addition to the usual festivities, there are the Montrose Founders Awards that are being presented. There's a retelling of the history of the founding of the town, as well as some comments by those on the dais that are attending, as well as speakers from the local Chamber of Commerce and the Historical Society and the Board of Directors of the Montrose Shopping Park itself. It's a terrific day of old-time photos, food, family fun, and again, that's this Sunday from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. Hope everybody will turn out, and we'll see you there for the 97th birthday of the town of Montrose. They don't look a day over 96, do they? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. That sounds great. It is, always do a very good job there. Are there any other comments, Mr. Najarian?
I'd like to make a few comments. The first one is I think it's important for the community to realize that recently a medical study was published indicating that those folks who live adjacent to freeways, aside from having a much higher incidence of asthma and emphysema and other medical ailments, definitely have a higher incidence of atherosclerosis, which is a form of arteriosclerosis, which to the common man is hardening of the arteries, which is a factor in most of the deaths in the United States. And this is a critical piece of information that was just released. It is going to be a cornerstone of the environmental defense, well, let's put it this way, the environmental opposition to the 710 freeway extension, whether it's by tunnel or by overland route. It is a frightening piece of news. We all knew the lung implications of the particulate matter, but apparently this now infiltrates the body and leads to hardening of the arteries, eventually cardiac arrest and cardiac symptoms. That was published in the Los Angeles Times, the Sunday edition, on the last page of the California section, just so everybody knows that. Next item is this Friday I'm going to be participating as a panelist in a panel discussion sponsored by Senator Boxer and the Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood, about the goal is to discuss the reauthorization of the transportation bill, and I will be discussing livable communities and the role that transit plays in that, and I will be sure to sing the praises of our planning director, Hassan Haghani, who unfortunately is not here today. I was a little harsh with him last week, perhaps, but I wanted to give him some accolades today, in particular with all the planning awards, and you get to take the accolades, Mr. Foy, with regards to the downtown specific plan that we passed, as well as the mobility plan, and I'll be sure to mention Steve Zern and John O'Bagdanian's efforts in bringing that mobility plan, as well as sing the praises of my colleagues on the council here, and really highlight the good things that Glendale has been doing to integrate transportation, mobility, pedestrian-friendly, oriented development, etc. So that's going to be on Friday. And the last thing I'd like to do is I'd like to have placed on the agenda a revisitation to our municipal code, Title 30, Chapter 62, at sequence, where the appeals process for zoning decisions is made. Clearly, I think there's some ambiguity in the code. I don't think it's fair that we have to rely on 40-year-old city attorney opinions or interpretations of other cities' codes by Court of Appeals located throughout the state to tell us what we in Glendale really mean. So what I'd like to do is have that on the agenda so we as a council can discuss, do we want a de novo? If so, let's spell it out as a de novo hearing. Do we want to have a separate section for clarification if any department head wants a clarification? Do we want to section out requests for clarification? And I think that would lead to some good discussion, if nothing else, to clarify the current intent of the council. So I'm hoping I can get
Well,
Mr.
some
Graham.
hand up. I don't know that I agree with all of those things at this point, but certainly we'll second putting it on the agenda so that we have a chance to discuss it. If it's of concern to one of the council, then we should give the courtesy of putting that on the agenda for some discussion. My only question is, you mentioned we shouldn't rely on 40-year-old city attorney opinions. Are you saying that our city attorney is only 40 years old?
No. He's a little bit older.
The city attorney, not the city attorney.
Yes.
Mr. Starbird.
No, that was my clarification on the second vote, not the 40-year-old comment.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you. Next.
Next is consent items following a routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
Okay, do I have a
I'll move consent calendar at 5.
Second?
roll call, please?
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
At 6, it would be oral communications.
All right. This is for presentations only. We have 3 cards. First is Gautam Kulkarni and Andre Nikitin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Gautam Kulkarni. I'm the director for the Neuroscience Institute at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. And I'm pleased to to announce a very exciting event that's coming up on March 14th here in Glendale. It's the 3rd annual Glendale Downtown Dash. This year we are also the official startup race for the LA Marathon, and we've also included a kiddie mile fun ride and a family fun bike ride. So it's a very exciting event on March 14th. So I would encourage all of you to participate and show your support and form teams and run. It's for we do this as a community service for stroke patients and raising the awareness. Stroke is the 3rd leading cause of death in the U.S. and the 2nd leading cause of death in the San Fernando Valley. So we really appreciate your support. And I'd like to introduce Andre Nikitin. He's our healthcare foundation officer. You can say a few more words.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, I just want to reiterate once again the importance of this community event. It truly is becoming an athletic event of choice in Glendale. And in the last year, the 2nd Glendale Downtown Dash, I just want to read you a few numbers, attracted over 1,250 participants from the Glendale area, and over 125 volunteers participated. We had 52 exhibitor booths, and 35 dash teams were formed. Participants ranged in age from the youngest dasher, age 3, to the oldest dasher, age 79. As you can see, it's a wide spectrum of participants, and this year we're doing something special. A kiddie mile run that is sponsored by our friends at Nestle USA. And a family bike ride to promote biking in the Glendale community. We believe it's a wonderful addition to this event. The event, of course, raises funds that benefit stroke services in this community. Last year, we raised over $67,000 for these purposes, and this year we are soliciting sponsorships, participation, and we already have an impressive roster of sponsors. We mentioned Nestle already. Glendale Galleria and Americana at Brand are sponsoring Glendale News Press. Downtown Glendale Association co-hosts the event with Glendale Adventist Medical Center Neuroscience Institute, and you have the director right here. Boehringer Ingelheim Pharmaceutical Company is one of the sponsors, Damon's Steakhouse and Los Angeles Federal Credit Union, among many, many other booth sponsors and vendors. Please come join us on March 14, and we also want to extend personal invitations to the committee, to the council members for the Dash kickoff event on March 3. If you permit me, please.
Yeah, it's at the Alex Theater. It's the VIP event. We're going to have some stroke survivors talk about their how they had a stroke and how they walked into the hospital with severe neurological deficits and what we were able to do for them. And we are proud that we are able to offer this service right here in the city of Glendale and be the prime provider for stroke services in the Glendale community. So we have a few
Thank you.
invites here for you, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. I'll make sure that the council participates in the Kitty Mile.
Training for it all year, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Maxime Velichink.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, I'm here, my name is Maxim Velichkin, and I'm here representing the Positive Motions Foundation, as well as Glendale Philharmonic, a newly formed organization. I am a principal cellist of the Glendale Philharmonic and a frequent participant in the Positive Motion concert series. I'm here to speak about our upcoming concert on March 6. This is an exciting event featuring our concertmeistress Limor Toren in a program of chamber music, music of Antonin Dvořák, Johannes Brahms, Felix Mendelssohn. This is very important for us that this concert series, as well as the initiative itself, is supported because I personally believe the significance of this new concert series, and especially in these difficult times, are not only for the nominal value, meaning classical music in the community, but also for the symbolic meaning, whereas many symphony orchestras and concert series are suffering considerably, some of the major ones. We're trying to do something that is basically goes against all odds. So your support is very important. The concert is on March 6. It's at 7:30 p.m. It will be, as all of our concerts so far, it will be in the First Baptist Church of Glendale, which is located very nearby. It's 209 North Louis Street. The tickets can be purchased from a number of websites as well as phones. The primary phone number for the ticket purchasing is 323-663-3601. And the websites where the tickets can be purchased and the information can be obtained about the concert is www.glendalephilharmonic.com and www.positivemotions.org, as well as www.celloart.com. Once again, the phone number is 663-3601. This is a poster that we have of the event, which we have for every event. And I would like to submit. Thank you very much. Please come and support.
Thank you, sir. Michelle Salas.
Hi, good afternoon. She's passing around a flyer, basically a community forum we're having this Saturday at the United Community Church regarding Glendale Health Center. Basically, Supervisor Antonovich, which represents this district, has a plan to close Glendale Health Center, privatize it. So on Saturday, we're going to be joined by community members, residents of Glendale, patients, and staff of the Glendale Health Center to strategize on how we're going to stop Supervisor Antonovich's plan to privatize this clinic, which would basically put 3,500 patients who are mostly elderly, Armenian, and Latino in danger. Who would also sever long-standing relationships between the patients and the staff at the clinic. So we're inviting the entire City Council, Mayor Frank Quintero, to join us at this forum on this Saturday, the 20th. And my number is on the flyer if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Mark Sturdivant.
Mayor Quintero, members of council, I'm Mark Sturdivant, Senior Analyst for the Community Services and Parks Department. And I just wanted to take a brief moment to let you know and those who are watching at home about a community meeting that we have coming up later this week. This is the community outreach meeting on the Glendale Narrows Riverwalk project, and it will be this Thursday night, 7 p.m. at the Pacific Community Center. And what sets this meeting apart from others that we've had on the Riverwalk project is that this is the first community meeting that deals with all three phases of the Riverwalk project. We'll, of course, take a look at Phase 1, which is now in the design stage. We'll also look ahead to Phase 2, which is about the connection from the Phase 1 path to the Phase 2 portion that's being constructed as part of the Fairmont flyover. And we'll also look at possible connections across the Verdugo Wash to the city of Los Angeles. And then finally, we'll take a look at Phase 3, which is an exploration of the idea of a potential bridge across the LA River into Griffith Park. We'll have breakout sessions on a number of issues, including equestrian uses, bicycle uses, bridge design and location, community access and connectivity, and we'll talk about the look and feel of the Riverwalk project. The entire community is invited. I hope you can join us as well. And again, that is this Thursday night, 7 p.m. at the Pacific Community Center. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, oral communications is terminated. Let's move on. Next, please.
Well, at least the announcement portion is over.
For now.
Okay. At 7, under adoption of ordinances, the 7A ordinance authorizing and approving a lease of a real property to STC1 LLC for an existing telecommunications facility at Freeway Park Site A. This was offered on February 9th, 2010 by Councilmember Weaver.
Mr. Mayor, move 7A.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmembers Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
At 8, under action items, at 8A is Director of Administrative Services, Finance, regarding second quarter financial update and an adjustment to the adopted 2009-2010 budget. At A1 is resolution of appropriation amending the adopted 2009-2010 budget.
Mr. Starbird.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, under normal circumstances, this second quarter budget update would be a fairly quick receive and file. However, in light of the last 2 years of tremendously challenging fiscal conditions facing the city, and frankly the City Council's hard work and the staff's hard work to maintain a balanced budget and stay within our means, this mid-year report takes on considerably more significance than it otherwise might. I'm going to turn to Bob Elliott here in just a moment to give you a quick overview of that, but I want to say before he gets into the detail that it continues to be a challenging time for Glendale. But once again, as you'll see projected for this year, we believe we will stay within a balanced budget, not utilizing reserves. Virtually the same position as last year, although last year we actually ended the year putting some additional resources into reserves, but that the outlook continues to be very challenging. We're monitoring the situation at the state on a day-by-day basis as its budget unfolds, and once again we have areas where we feel we may be threatened with their taking local resources if indeed the picture continues to unfold as we believe it will for the state. But so far the picture for Glendale is a stable one, cautiously optimistic, but a stable one, and continuing to follow your direction to live within our means and maintain reserves and address structural issues so that in the long run we can emerge from however long this downturn will be in strong financial position and prepared to continue to provide needed public services to the community. With that, let me turn to Bob Elliott for a quick overview. Bob?
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just wanted to touch briefly, trigger finger. These are the topics we want to cover tonight, just basically go over our 9-10 adopted budget, where we're at in the second quarter, some of the adjustments, and I may add those are all non-general fund, and then a brief preview of some of our 10-11 challenges that Jim spoke to. Just to rehash, I guess, where we started the year and some of the things that we put into place for this adopted budget and some of the strategies we implemented. With our original estimates, we implemented a cost allocation. We consolidated the fleet, and this was a one-time cost savings to the general fund of $1 million. We used a little bit of the 08-09 surplus resulting from the hiring freeze. And then we implemented a lot of the departmental reductions that we reviewed with you throughout the budget study sessions. We had some co-eliminations with the firefighters and some other organizational changes and reductions from health services and graphics. That brought us to our adopted budget of $164 million in the general fund. As we move throughout the year, our sales tax has done okay relative to cities surrounding us. LA is down about 17%. Burbank is down over 20%. We are down only 12.9%. But in looking at that, we've reduced our estimate by about $1.2 million, as we expect our receipts to be a little less this year than what we thought at the beginning. Again, a lot of our retails are doing quite well relative to others, but they're still struggling as compared to what we've had in the past. Our expenditures are doing well. They're below the 50% mark where we would expect to be at this time of year. That is in part due primarily to the hard hiring freeze that we have in the general fund. It does fluctuate, but it at any one time is between $5 and $7 million, depending on what's vacant at the time. Any department wanting to hire anybody has to get city manager approval from Ms. Beers here, and she's been quite tough on them to justify any filling any position. So we are counting on those savings to carry us through the end of the year, and as such, we are not recommending any adjustments at this point in time.
Mr. Mayor, Bob, before you leave this slide, Bob, go back and touch on the other two items that are going to be coming in under our original budget estimates, the construction-related fees and the interest on investments.
Well, as you know, you heard from Mr. Barucki last week, our portfolio, while safe, is performing at less than 2%. So our interest earnings are down substantially. And also with the construction activity down, as everybody knows, the development has dwindled quite a bit, resulting in a lot fewer fees and charges from projects going forward.
We should note before we leave this slide, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, that the sales tax figure does not include the returns from the holiday season.
Correct.
At this point. So that we've looked at it compared to prior years. We think we'll still be under our projections by $1.2 million, but we may have had a better holiday season than we think, in which case this number could be somewhat improved. The same thing as it relates to construction-related fees. There may be a large project or so that could come in and could make this picture more positive than it appears here. But all in all, this is our best shot at where we think we'll be at the end of the year, which is revenues below where we had anticipated by about $3.7 million. Very consistent with what we're hearing from other communities around us in the region as well. In fact, in most cases, the stories we're hearing from other communities are worse than this. And, of course, you've been reading about the city of L.A., where they face a almost daunting challenge in balancing their budget this year. Go ahead, Bob.
Some of the adjustments that we have at mid-year pertain to some of the other funds. They're basically housekeeping items. Some of the mutual aid amounts that we have were appropriating monies for those. We're moving those costs out to the mutual aid fund, and they're fully reimbursed. Same with police and fire for special detail assignments. And then we're recommending appropriation of some grants, notably the SRO grant and the Eurasian Organized Crime Task Force. Two notable items, as we've talked about and mentioned a number of times, are pass-throughs for the redevelopment agency. We're appropriating an additional $355,000. And the big ticket item is the CRAF payment, Supplemental Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund payment to the state. We have to appropriate this to send a check to the state, assuming the California Redevelopment Association's lawsuit fails. This is in preparation for that, assuming it fails, but we're hoping it does not. So, one other cleanup item is a forfeited cash deposit that we're asking for appropriation for some street and curb repairs, and then within the fleet fund, appropriating some replacement dollars for some vehicles that have been on hold for, I believe, 2 years. So we've been trying to squeeze the vehicles for as long as possible, but we do need to replace some. Moving on to the 2010-11, just to touch on some of the things that we've been looking at. As Jim mentioned, our revenues are fairly constant. However, we do face some increasing costs, primarily with some of our benefits and insurance with medical and our PERS costs. We have some COLAs in some of our MOUs that we're factoring into the budget. Another housekeeping thing that we're going to do starting next year is collapsing the police augmentation fund. Some new accounting rules force us to collapse that and put it into the general fund, and we'll talk more in detail as we go through the study sessions. That should have no immediate effect on the general fund when we do that next year. Some of the other things we're working on is looking very hard at our internal service funds. If you recall, when I presented the CAFR back in December, one of the management letter comments was trying to address some of the deficits that we've gotten in our internal service funds, notably the insurance and workers' comp funds have fairly sizable deficits. So we're trying to come up with a multi-year plan to pull those funds back to even. And then we have the challenge of deferred maintenance with all our infrastructure. That's going to be a constant battle that we face. All that said and done, we're looking at probably a $5 to $10 million gap when we start the 2010-11 budget year. That's a fairly large swing, but we're working on a lot of different solutions and things to try and address this gap. But this is just kind of the preview numbers as it stands today.
We should point out, Mr. Mayor, that the projected gap assumes balanced budget this year, but that all of the positions that were caught up in the freeze for the course of this year are filled in next year. So you automatically start out with a much larger actual budget and anticipated expenditure than this year. So that, for example, if the hiring freeze continued through next year, you generate from $6 to $7 million in savings in the general fund. So that helps put this gap in a little bit of perspective. It's not nearly the magnitude. A problem is if we were continuing to see a $10 million budget shortfall every year. It's not the sort of thing the state faces where they haven't addressed the current year problem, and so it gets even bigger in the subsequent year. That's not what you face here. So putting it in perspective, it anticipates filling all of the positions that had been frozen, and as a result, the budget jumps up and you show a gap. At the end of the day, if that freeze were to continue, that freeze alone would generate $6 to $7 million in savings in the course of the year. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the upcoming month as we get into budget study sessions.
Very different than Los Angeles.
Once again, Mr. Mayor, as you know, you all and we started over 2 years ago to address this issue, and that included the elimination of over 100 positions in the general fund, all of the economies that Bob has mentioned, in addition to continuing the hiring freeze, rolling back some of our employee contracts, and reducing our costs. If neighboring communities had started that 2 years ago, they wouldn't be in the shape they're in today.
And with that, any questions you have?
Any questions? Mr. Najarian.
Mr. Elliott, on the, I'm going to slide 4, let's say, and you're talking about our revenues tracking less than expected. And 3.7 is the total number. And is that to the end of the second quarter, or is that a projected annual deficit?
That's annualized through what we think will be at June 30.
That's why I say if the second quarter holiday season comes in stronger than we've anticipated, you'd see this number go down. If for some reason, and it's not likely, that interest rates took a tick up between now and the end of the year, that would improve this figure. Or if we see more than we've seen in the first 6 months in significant building construction, that could cause this number to be better.
And then the hiring freeze that we currently have in place makes up for all that, makes up for the 3.7. So
Yeah, the current hiring freeze is about $7 million.
right. About how many positions is that?
70 to 80, depending on 60.
86.
So 86 in the general fund right now. And remember, we're keeping a freeze on even non-general fund positions for, in large part, so we can have some capacity to move positions around if need be in the upcoming budget year.
And then you're then looking forward for the 2010, 2011. If we maintain those those
maintain the
freezes, then we're still going to recoup that $6 to $7 million. You said
You'd probably cover off the bulk of the $5 to $10 million that we're projecting in a gap. Remember, the budget for the upcoming year, we would assume all the positions are filled that are authorized. So the 100 we've eliminated over the past 2 years, they're gone. But the ones that have been frozen, the budget assumes they're all filled. So we see what's our gap like if we were fully staffed and there was no hiring freeze. And that's where the $5 to $10 million shortfall comes in. In addition, the upcoming year's budget, we begin to take some steps to address some of the internal service fund funding needs that we have that Bob mentioned.
when do we start the budget?
We're going to be coming into you in March to start talking to you about some general guidelines and philosophy before we start to get into the more detailed review. So rather than us do a whole lot of work on budget and then come in to talk to you about it in the April-May time frame, we're going to start in March coming in and talking to you about the broad picture and strategies and any direction you'd like to give us as we prepare the budget.
Are we still on our 2-year budget cycle, which we had?
No,
we had implemented that.
Yeah, we have fallen
year
off that
before.
with the current fiscal crisis. You can't. It's hard enough to do 1 year without trying to do 2 years.
Two-year budget cycles work well if things are fairly
Steady.
They
stable.
don't work well in this environment.
Yeah, my feeling is the sooner we start, the better. I've
That's
always
right.
felt somewhat rushed through so many of these budget sessions, so we can start to lay out.
Why we're going to come in March with a general conversation about strategies and magnitude of the problem.
Want a motion?
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Weaver?
Move 8A1.
Second.
Thank you for the hard work.
Thank you. Roll call.
Council members Raymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes.
It's nice to be better off than the state and the city of L.A. and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And the country.
The country.
Next, please.
And 8B is Director of Community Services and Parks regarding grant application to the statewide Park Development and Community Revitalization Program 2008 for the Maryland Mini Park Project. B1 is a resolution adopting a negative declaration for the Maryland Mini Park conceptual site plan. B2 is a motion accepting the concept level site plan and directing staff to proceed with submission of the grant application.
Starbird.
Yes, I go to Mr. Ahern for the staff report. Dave.
Yes, sir. Mayor Quintero, members of the council, tonight we have before you the concept plan for the Maryland Avenue Park conceptual design. This is a plan that we've done an exhaustive community outreach process on. To date, we've had 15 community meetings on this project. We've had over 230 participants at these meetings, ages from 9 years old to 103 years old, and from as far away as Uzbekistan and Garfield Avenue. So we've really covered a lot of terrain. And the staff working on it, Mark Sturdivant and Peter Verheilig, have really led the community outreach. It's been really a model effort for us and one that we're going to continue to use. It's really been a rewarding process, and it's really been pretty remarkable. We have a really strong project architect on this, Volt's design group. They designed Cerritos Park, and you'll recall we won awards on that design. So I'll go through this PowerPoint quickly and then answer any questions that you have. So our site is at Maryland Avenue, the 800 block. This is between Garfield and Windsor, located east of the Pacific BMW site. It's about a half-acre site, 21,000 square feet, essentially 3 residential lots. We're submitting for grant funding for this through the state Prop 84 grant funding. We're requesting $1.7 million in the grant application. This will be a really highly designed park if we receive this level of funding for it. If we don't, then we would reduce the design components. As I said, we've had this extensive community outreach process, and I won't belabor that point. Not only kids, neighbors, but also the auto dealers who are the largest business entity as a group in that area. The grant application directs us to look at 5 components in the park: design features, where they're located, how big they are, safety, what beautification, sustainability is one of the elements as well. So we've looked at all of that in the design. Here's a few photos of the community outreach and participation process, and the drawings that you see are the drawings that come from the community. So we met with the parents group at Roosevelt, we met with the kids, we met with the tech lab that was designing rockets, and they worked on park design with us. We met with the seniors at the ARC to talk to them during a lunch about what they wanted in the park. We met with the kids at Horace Mann Elementary School, and the focus of all these meetings was within a half a mile of the park. And that's part of the grant, to really focus in on what the people around that park want and need. They engaged in drawing bubble diagrams of what should be in the park, and there were a number of things that were suggested. The kids put a lot of effort into it. They took it home as a Christmas holiday project and came back, and actually one young girl had researched the Latin names of the drought-tolerant plants and put them on her plan. It was really pretty remarkable. And as I say, it was really rewarding for us to work with these kids and
Is that a
their
swimming
feedback.
pool on that top picture?
There was a swimming pool. You'll be happy to know there was also an airport landing strip in one of the designs. But no bad ideas. We incorporated them all. We had weekend meetings, we had evening meetings, we had morning meetings. We really went all out. What we heard from the community is these are the things that they're interested in no particular order. A tot lot, a trellis, shade, community art. One of the things that we focused on was the historic fabric of that portion of the city, Tropico, and how we could incorporate that history into an art element in the park, as well as just public art in the park. That seemed to strike a chord with area residents. The health and fitness area was another big piece that the kids and the parents wanted. So we designated an area for that. There was a real focus on safety. They wanted a nice fence, not just any fence, a nice fence. Folks wanted lighting, but not too much lighting because they live right next to it and they don't want the lights glaring through their windows. So it went from general design ideas to very specific ideas about accessing the park, keeping it safe. Community gardens was a desire from the garden club at the school to some of the neighbors, and that fit in with the sustainability concept for the park. So all of that was in there. We had some budding architects at the elementary school and at the junior high, and it was an opportunity for these kids. I mean, designing and building the park is what our mission is in parks, but it's also building community, and building the parks is the tool, the tactic that we employ to build a community. So letting these kids interact with engineers and architects, people that they may not normally run into in their everyday life, was a really rewarding and important part of this process for us. At the end, not the end, but at this stage, we've come up with a concept plan. It's in your packet, and it incorporates a couple of play areas. They wanted play areas, but one strong theme was not just for little kids. We want play areas for the kids who are 10, 12, 14 years old. We also want in the upper left-hand corner is the exercise area. In the upper right-hand corner is the garden plot. There's a grass area. There's climbing rocks, swing sets, play areas, shade structures. So you can see the design serves many masters. Again, this is at the concept level, so the elements can change locations, sizes, shapes. So if you increase one, decrease another. And so if this project were to be funded by the state and approved by the council, then we would take it back out, refine it, and then come back to council with a more refined plan at the design development stage. The grant application is due on March 1st, so we wanted to get it to you tonight, get your feedback. If you want changes in it, we have the architect here. He doesn't mind working late, so we can get him working on any changes that you might like in the plan. Again, it's just at the concept level, and then we'll get it into the state by March 1st for the application. We'll know in September if we're awarded funding for this. One of the cost elements on this that we don't normally have is recycled water. The main is out on Brand Boulevard. It's a pretty significant cost to bring it over to the park, but it meets the sustainability criteria, so that's one of the elements. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 to run that line over there, maybe a little less than that. So that kind of drives up the price on it, but we wanted to put it all in. Here's our outline schedule. Grants are due March 1st. We'll know in September if we got the award, and then we would come back with DDs to the council. We have the project architect here, Gary Vasquez from David Volt's Design. Of course, the rest of our project team, Mark Sturdivant and Peter, are here, and we can answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, Mr. Draymond.
Well, I just wanted to say, for starters, you did mention that the design firm, the architect firm, Volts, did do the Cerritos project, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and what a terrific project that is. So, of course, now you've set the bar. So we're expecting big things with this project as well. I'm particularly pleased with the community gardens for a number of reasons. One is it's near one of our elementary schools, which is important. In particular, Horace Mann, one of my favorites. I've been over there many times, and I always go over to cheer on Principal Rosa Alonso with her good work she's doing there. I'm glad you were able to have public outreach there. I know this is just a highly conceptual design at the moment, but I just wanted to compliment you on it, both the design firm and the department. It's terrific. Looking forward to it, and it'll be nice also to have a community garden in Glendale. So,
okay,
that's true.
Mr. Weaver.
2 questions.
Sure.
For safety reasons, will there be any access off the alley? Which way are you looking?
Initially, Councilman Weaver, we were looking at not having access off the alley, but through the community process, the people that live across the alley wanted access. So we will use probably a wrought iron gate so that it's see-through. We'll put gates at that part of the alley, and then we'll simply lock it up at night as we do the front of the park.
That's why I wanted to ask you, what anticipated hours of operation do you look at because of the residential?
Yeah, probably most of our parks we stay open till 9 or 10. In a park like this, I think we'd close it at dusk. So a little later in the summer months, earlier in the winter months.
Ms. Friedman, then Mr. Najarian.
First, I want to thank you and your department for all the work you did and the charrettes and reaching out and getting the community involved. I think it's a beautiful design, absolutely beautiful. I love the variety in the programming, the rocks, the exercise area for adults. I think all of that are going to be really embraced in the community. I just have a few very small thoughts. I know this is very conceptual, but one would be to consider putting a couple trees in the middle to give some shade to the playground. And the other one is just given the Monterey Community Garden and the demand and the fact that they have a waiting list now, that maybe doing more plots that are smaller so that more people have an opportunity.
Sure.
So this is just conceptual, but there needs to be enough that people don't, people aren't disappointed and, 3 or 4 people get plots and everyone else is on a waiting list for 30 years.
Okay.
So, and, it's sort of the same with picnic tables. But I think it's just gorgeous. I can't wait to see it in there, and I think it's going to be an incredible thing for the community in that area. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Najarian.
Mr. Agron, is this the site where they were once talking about a subterranean parking by Pacific BMW?
It is.
And those talks just did
The
not
numbers
turn out to
didn't
be
work
feasible.
on that. It just didn't pencil out to put in a subterranean garage and then put the park over it. The cost per space was
Too much.
somewhere over $100,000 a space, where you can normally build them for about 25 to 35.
Okay. And on this Prop 84 grant, after 4 or 5 community meetings, I would have thought that you'd have gotten the gist, but I see that a preference is given to the number of community outreach meetings that you have in developing the park. So the more the better.
Well, that, and from the meetings, they just drew us into more meetings, especially with the kids and the parents, to have that first conversation, then go back and show them in writing what it is they were talking about and get more feedback. So part of it was the grant, part of it was it just led to it through the natural process, and quite frankly, we were having really a fun time at community meetings with these folks.
The grant application side, is this a format that you would suggest using for future park designs?
Absolutely. I think we've kind of come down on that this is something that really works and that really allows us to get in touch with the community. Some of the meetings we sent out 3,000-4,000 notices on and had 2 people show up. But by engaging the kids and the school, we got better participation, and we got the larger aspect of our mission, and that's building community. So it's something we're going to continue to use in all our projects.
I know some of our biggest disappointments in our park have been the vandalism that occurs after they're all open and we cut the ribbons. Is there anything in the design process that we can do at this point that could prevent future vandalism in terms of lighting and situating structures and things like that?
All of that comes into it. Mark Sturdivant had meetings with the COPS unit, and it was one of the things that we identified as a key aspect in the design, how we locate this thing in terms of elements in the park, the types of fencing materials that don't lend themselves to graffiti, the hours of operation and the lighting that then make the park an area that's not opportunistic for people that want to commit those types of crimes. So all that went into it.
Mr. Starbird.
Dave, are the steel pilings still in this property?
They are. This was going to be a multifamily housing project back in the 90s, and then moved forward, and they'd put in the steel pilings, as Mr. Starbird described. They're cut off about 3 feet below grade.
So they won't continue to pose a problem for the development?
They're 3 feet below grade.
But the tot lot won't settle?
Mr. Weaver.
Other question, are you taking into consideration lines of sight, like when the police drive down Maryland or the alley, they'll be able to see through?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's on the H alley, which is, as you know, is well known to the council.
Yes.
And this is the alley where you're doing the widening to create better vehicle access for police. And that's one of the key reasons we're using the wrought iron fencing that is see-through.
So they'll be able to see from Maryland, the alley,
from either end.
clear through to the other end.
So my comments are pretty much the same. Very good job, Mr. Ahern. I think you, Mr. Sturdivant, and the rest of you have done a great job on your community outreach, especially. I'm very impressed that you took the time to do it. I think you got plenty of input, and there's lots of possibilities here for lots of different folks, from working out to the community gardens. And anyway, it looks great. I think you're going to get a very positive response from not only the council, but I think from all of the residents.
Thank you. And you know, I get to stand up here tonight and tell you about the project, and I manage the design development section. But Mark Sturdivant and Peter Verheilik really did the hard work, and just kept going back out and meeting with folks at night and on the weekends, and it was really something. It's really been an experience for us in terms of how we're going to address this on all our other projects. So a lot of credit to Mark and Peter.
Well, I saw Mr. Sturdivant in a whole bunch of slides, so I know
he's the oldest ninth grader at Roosevelt, yes.
And then let me say, then Ms. Friedman just remarked, I mean, the millions and millions of dollars that we've spent south, meaning the city, has spent south of the 134. I mean, we have people there at the lectern that are talking about South Glendale. I mean, this is one more project, and we're really making up for 25, 30-plus years of growth in the southern section of the city. So this is one more addition for the surrounding neighborhood.
Mayor, I think this is the 8th neighborhood park in about as many years.
Right?
Mr. Mayor, it could have been 3 single-family dwellings or apartments.
Right. Yeah, it was originally a condominium track. And
Yeah. Would you like a motion?
yes, I would.
I'd like to move 8B 1 and 2.
And a second. Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
Next, we return to oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to a speaker, but there'll be no debate or decision, and the city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Okay, the first speaker is Robert Buniatian, followed by Jay Rando.
Good evening, council members. My name is Robert Bunatian. I'm a resident of Glendale, and would just like to read a prepared statement. The biggest contributor to the housing expense in Glendale is the interference in the free market mechanism of the housing sector by the government of Glendale. The creation and implementation of regulations have over the years restricted the supply of housing to meet the demand of existing and potential residents of Glendale. The result of this policy has been a gradual and sometimes a violent rise in the costs of housing. Economists have researched the effect of regulation on the costs of housing. Two of these economists are Stephen Malpezzi and Edward Glazer. The independent research from these economists have the same conclusion. Malpezzi concluded that a change from lightly regulated environment to a heavily regulated one increased the home values by 51% and decreased the number of permits to build by 42%. The overarching result is that high regulations by government restricts the supply of housing to meet demand, and thus those locations with high regulations have higher housing prices, higher rents, and lower home ownership rates. Examples of the regulations that force housing prices to increase are zoning laws. Specifically, some of the programs that restrict the supply to meet demand are the restrictions on density, height, and design, building fees, slow approval processes, restrictions on growth, preservation laws, land use regulations, and the upcoming green regulations. The existing solutions to the housing woes of Glendale are illogical, economically ignorant, and politically motivated, or worse. Glendale continues to promote public housing and inclusionary zoning for solutions to a broader problem of the high cost of living in Glendale. What the government of Glendale does not realize is that quote-unquote affordable housing actually makes living in Glendale a more expensive experience. The irony is that affordable housing insulates residents from making the hard choice of moving to a more affordable location and transfers the cost of this decision to every other resident of Glendale, including the recipients of public housing. The basic solution to the housing needs of Glendale is simple. The government of Glendale needs to let the free market work. It is always a wonder to me how the residents of Glendale can entrust 5 individuals to efficiently organize the individual and subjective human actions of 200,000 residents. It is astonishing that 5 individuals can think that they have enough divine knowledge that they can organize the residents of Glendale in a manner that will bring euphoric life. This is one reason that calls of reform are never ending. Of course, it is not the fault of government officials why costs of housing is high. It is the fault of those individuals that just will not give up their liberty so that government officials can neatly organize their lives for them. In reality, what existing property owners really have in Glendale is protection from government in insulating them from market forces. However, the basic job of government should be to promote equal opportunity and not to promote and implement laws and regulations that give advantage to Group A at the expense of every other group. And I think the presentation that was just given here about the parks is an example of this. While the park is nice, and I'm sure it is useful, what was the alternative use for that land? The alternative use was for housing. Now, if the private market determined that there was housing, what would occur? Housing will be built, there will be more competition, which would drive down rents. Rents are driven down, it affords people to buy more food or to spend money somewhere else, which creates jobs. But Glendale chooses year in and year after to plan Glendale to plan and regulate Glendale in a manner that makes housing expensive year in and year out. Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret Hammond. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Not yet, Margaret. Jay Rando.
No. No, just stand up there. Hi, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Jay Rando. I live in Glendale. I read in the paper that you guys are considering a green initiative for our rebuilding and redevelopment, and that's a really good idea. One of the problems with green initiatives, they will take between 3 and 5 years to even recognize any kind of benefit from what you're going to do, and you should do it. Don't. I'm not up here saying don't do it, but do. However, something that would go a lot further and a lot faster would be one of the first cities to do this, would be to adopt the white roof and white parking lot initiative. If the city of Glendale were to adopt an initiative that would require all owners of parking lots, black parking lots, would require all homes to have their roofs painted white. Now, I know that sounds, really off the wall at first. If they did that, the amount of energy savings versus money put out would be quite amazing, and would also do a great benefit to the environment. Energy saving versus money, I'll give you an example. If you took a solar panel that was 1 meter square and you put it out in the middle of the park, and you put a panel that was just painted white, gloss white in the same park, it would take you 53 years to get the energy savings back off of the solar panel that you would get off of the white panel. What this does is it allows the two things to happen. In the building I live in the condo we did, we actually painted part of the roof white. People didn't want to necessarily believe this, but the units that lived below the roof, from the first floor all the way up to the 4th floor, experienced an energy savings of anywhere from 12 to 25%. Now, that means that Glendale Water and Power has a lot less power that it has to generate for our city, and they can go out and sell it to somewhere else, who's a city that's maybe not as forward-thinking as we would be. The cost to owners is always a question when this comes up, but the average house, if you made every house in Glendale paint their house, would be about $350. How much would they save? Well, that becomes on which way you want to look on how they save. They spend $350, but they probably end up spending $700 less in the first year on power. So they actually end up making $350, or as I like to say, you just don't spend it on something else that you don't want. If you don't believe that this works, anyone out there on the council that doesn't believe that it works, it has to be white. Go buy a $4.28 can of epoxy white spray paint that they use for refrigerators. Find your air conditioning unit. Spray not the coils, that's the funny thing that looks like a radiator. Spray all of the metal white. Walk out one afternoon when it's warm and see if you can put your hand on it. You'll be surprised, A, how cold it is, and also that will also save your air conditioner. You'll probably get another 5 years out of it. If you don't believe that, I did that on my father's house. He still lives in Vegas, where the average summer temperature is somewhere just below the surface of the sun. He has not replaced a air conditioner now in 8 years. We would be the very first city probably to adopt this. But if we don't do it, who will? And if we don't do it now, when will we do it? When it's too late? Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret Hammond.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, city staff, and my friends, and Jay, too. Haven't seen him for a while. My name is Margaret Hammond, and I'm a resident of Glendale. First off, I'm glad that the Riverwalk meeting has already been brought up, being February the 18th, Thursday evening at 7 at Pacific Community Park. And not just, horses, equestrians, and hikers or bikers, but we need walkers too. So all of you get out here to this meeting and have your say about what you think about the park and what it needs. Now, the second thing is today, I was down on Louise Street, and I walked down my driveway. A guy on a bike almost got me. I don't know what he did. No, he didn't know me, so it's all right. It wasn't on purpose. But what I'm saying is, quite often I see this going on. These people, and they're not children, they're not kids, they're adults riding their bikes on the sidewalk to the detriment of pedestrians. Particularly older people. Maybe it wouldn't hurt a younger person to get hit by a bike, but an older person being knocked down can suffer injuries that end up being very serious, even killing them, because, a broken hip can lead to other complications. And I read in the paper, there was an article back in December, and I have it, where 19 to 20% of the bicyclists are on the sidewalk. Now, this is a hazard, too, for autos, because they aren't looking for the bikes going through and so forth. I've almost saw one hit because he was thinking he was a car instead of, a pedestrian instead of being more or less on the auto section. But at any rate, skateboarders got ticketed. I know. My grandsons, I came, and they banned them from the sidewalks, and we got a skate park for them. So therefore, I think that maybe we ought to be looking at these bicycles that are on the sidewalk. And something else for seniors. People were talking about it today at a luncheon meeting I was at the Women's Athletic Club, which is a very senior. And they've been getting phone calls relating to the census, and also forms that they supposedly are from the census. They look legal, asking for things like the Social Security and phone numbers and things that they're really not supposed to. One woman brought the form in. So they're out there. They're out there already trying to get people to give them information they shouldn't have. I don't mean the census takers. I mean whoever are trying to work the rackets. Because I also got a letter from Wells Fargo stating that they had sent me a credit card that I had requested, and that they needed me to call them and give them the number. They wanted a conversation. I thought, what the heck? I didn't order any credit card. I've got what I want. I don't order anymore. And when I called them, I kind of got a runaround. And what it turned out, they wanted me to give them the number off my credit card, and I went like, I don't think so. If you don't have it, I'm not giving it to you. And when I went to Wells Fargo, they said, no, we never sent you a letter. And also that this is another scam that's going on. So beware out there, ladies and gentlemen, because they're waiting on you. I really think it's too bad that people have to be on their guard so much. But some of them, when they get rooked, it's sad because they're really hard put. And the police department are overwhelmed with these kind of things. And remember the trash pickups. There's still some around town, pieces hanging around. 818-548-3916. I'm laughing at Mr. Stern. He's going, And you know the dash stroke. I have to tell you about that dash. My husband was one of the very first in the facility at the Adventist Hospital. I've said this before, when it opened up their stroke back in the 70s. Before that, there was nowhere in America that catered to people that had had strokes. They were the very first facility in America. And prior to that, you know, they were sent to Camarillo because they couldn't talk, they couldn't express themselves. People thought they were mentally, you know, beyond help. But they weren't. My husband was in that position where he couldn't talk or walk, or, you know, was a lot of problems. But through therapy at the Adventist, he was back to work in 3 months. And he had, you know, a big time stroke. He was paralyzed all on one side. So it is a great facility, and one that we can be very proud of, because, as I say, as far I remember the write-up, the doctor was from Sweden, who was the very first person who kept saying they need this kind of facility to rehabilitate, you know, stroke victims. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, that closes oral communications. Next, please.
Is there a motion? Was there any new business?
No.
Well, we do have to close the Housing Authority meeting.
So let's reconvene the Glendale Housing Authority out of returning from closed session. Nothing to report out.
Will we adjourn?
Seconded.
Housing is adjourned.
Will we adjourn for the city council?
Second.
We are adjourned.